Jake Turner lived in the lively center of Austin, Texas, where he worked as a freelance photographer capturing festivals, food trucks, and the city's vibrant sunsets. His career was thriving, but his relationships left him drained. He felt like he kept giving more than he received, always trying to prove his worth to women who didn't truly value his presence. One quiet Thursday evening, sitting in his usual spot at a downtown cafe near 6th Street, Jake confessed his frustrations to his best friend Ethan. "I don't know, man," Jake muttered. "I feel invisible unless I'm putting in all the effort." Ethan leaned back in his chair, sipping his coffee before answering. "You're not invisible," he said. "You're just too available. You never set boundaries." That word, boundaries, hit Jake harder than he expected. He realized he always changed his plans, ignored red flags, accepted disrespect, and stayed silent when he should have spoken up. Later that night, feeling reflective, Jake took out a napkin and wrote down 7 boundaries he would no longer break. Respecting his time, no last. Minute cancellations, clear communication, no chasing, prioritizing his goals, avoiding drama, and giving energy only to women who brought positivity. The next 2 weeks became a turning point. Jake put those boundaries into action. He worked on a big photography project for a new restaurant on South Congress, and for once, didn't let anyone interrupt his schedule. If someone texted him last minute or acted distant, he didn't chase. He felt a quiet strength growing inside him, something he hadn't felt before, self-respect. One afternoon, while shooting street portraits near a local art market, he met Sophie, a confident marketing director from Los Angeles visiting for a tech conference. She approached him to ask about his camera setup, and their conversation flowed effortlessly. They talked for nearly an hour, and for the first time in a long while, Jake felt genuinely intrigued. Sophie finally asked for his number and texted the next morning, "Dinner tonight." Jake looked at the message and felt the old instinct to drop everything, but stopped himself. Instead, he replied with calm confidence, "I'd like to, but I don't make same-day plans. Tomorrow works." He expected her to lose interest. Instead, she admired it. The next night over dinner, she told him he was unusual in the best way. "Most guys cancel everything if I text them," she said with a smile. "You didn't." Jake felt something shift inside him. His boundaries weren't pushing people away. They were filtering the wrong ones out. As he walked Sophie back to her hotel, he realized he wasn't bending to fit into someone else's schedule or expectations. For the first time in his dating life, he was showing up as the person he wanted to be, without apology. And surprisingly, that confidence made Sophie even more interested. Jake returned home that night knowing one thing for sure. The moment he started valuing himself, the world around him began to respond differently. Over the next month, Sophie returned to Austin twice for work, and each time, Jake stayed consistent with his boundaries. Their connection grew naturally, but Jake no longer acted out of fear of losing someone. One afternoon, when Sophie questioned why he sometimes took hours to reply, Jake simply told her, "I don't rush responses. I give thoughtful replies when I'm not busy." She went silent at first, clearly surprised by his honesty. Hours later, she apologized, explaining she wasn't used to someone valuing their time so firmly. Jake appreciated that she understood. His boundaries mattered and he wouldn't break them. Another week later, Sophie tried to test him without realizing it. She texted Jake just an hour before their scheduled dinner, saying she might have to cancel due to feeling overwhelmed from meetings. Old Jake would have tried to comfort her, reschedule the next day, or offer to come to her hotel. But this version of Jake handled things differently. He replied kindly but firmly, "No problem, but I don't reschedule last. minute cancellations in the same week. There was a pause. Then she responded with unexpected eagerness, asking if they could meet the following Saturday. She even insisted it would be her treat. Jake noticed the dynamic shifting in a way he had never experienced. The more he respected his own boundaries, the more Sophie seemed drawn to him. She admired how invested he was in his photography projects and how he structured his days with purpose. When she asked about his weekly schedule, he explained he had dedicated hours for editing, client meetings, workouts, and personal time. "You're disciplined," she said, almost impressed. Jake realized she wasn't used to men who had a life they genuinely valued outside of her attention, and that made her chase him rather than the other way around. One day, while they were walking around Lady Bird Lake, Sophie opened up about her past. She said most men she dated were either too passive or too eager to impress her because of her position and lifestyle in Los Angeles. "But you," she said, lightly nudging Jake's arm, "you don't try to win me, you just live your life." Jake smiled at that. "I used to overinvest," he admitted. "Now I don't chase. If someone fits into my life, great. If not, I keep moving." Sophie looked at him with admiration in her eyes, a look that said she valued him more than he realized. As the sun dipped low across the Austin skyline, painting the water golden, Sophie stopped walking and faced him. "I think I'm the one trying to impress you now," she said with a soft laugh. Jake smirked but didn't deny it. He had learned something powerful. The moment a man clearly defines and protects his boundaries, you women naturally respect him and move toward him. That evening, as they continued along the trail in quiet harmony, Jake understood he wasn't chasing love anymore. Instead, for the first time in his life, love was finding its way toward him on its own terms. As the weeks turned into months, Jake and Sophie's connection deepened in a way that felt steady, natural, and mature. Sophie began visiting Austin more frequently, sometimes extending her work trips just to spend extra days with him. But Jake didn't let this new closeness make him lose the boundaries he had built. He still prioritized his photography gigs, morning workouts, and personal routines. Surprisingly, Sophie didn't just accept this, she admired it. She once told him, "You don't revolve your life around me, and that makes me want to be part of your world even more." Jake realized that respect grows from consistency. One weekend, Sophie invited Jake to Los Angeles for the first time. It was a big step, but he agreed. When he arrived, he noticed how different her fast-paced world was compared to Austin's relaxed vibe. Sophie's schedule was packed, filled with meetings, events, and social gatherings, but she cleared time specifically for him, something she rarely did for anyone. At one event, her colleagues were surprised to see her with someone. "She never brings guys around," one coworker whispered to Jake. He didn't say much, but he understood what it meant. His presence mattered to her. During his visit, Sophie tried one subtle test that Jake instantly recognized. After a long day, she wanted him to cancel a morning photography shoot he'd scheduled with a client in downtown L.A. "Just skip it," she said playfully. "Spend the morning with me." Old Jake might have agreed without thinking. But now he smiled and shook his head. "I don't cancel work for anyone." Sophie stared at him for a moment, then nodded and said softly, "You're right. Keep doing that." Later that night, she admitted that seeing him stand firm made her feel even more secure with him. On Jake's last day in Los Angeles, they walked along the Santa Monica Pier. The ocean breeze was cool, the lights bright, and the atmosphere peaceful. Sophie was quieter than usual. Finally, she spoke. "You know, Jake, I didn't expect to fall for someone who doesn't live in my city, someone who doesn't chase me, someone who isn't impressed by my lifestyle." Jake glanced at her, waiting. She continued, "But you've shown me what stability looks like. You've shown me what a healthy connection feels like." Jake felt something warm settle in his chest. He had changed, not for her, but for himself. When he returned to Austin, something felt different between them. Sophie called more often, planned trips ahead of time, and made an effort that felt intentional. She wasn't just interested anymore. She was invested. Jake recognized that he had become a man who knew his worth and lived by his standards. And because of that, Al, you woman didn't just choose him, she pursued him. As he added new photos to his studio wall, he realized something profound. The right woman doesn't want a man who bends for her. She wants a man who stands tall beside her.